And just a reminder also to please mute your squares. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Well, everybody, good afternoon, good morning, good evening for some or all here across the time zones where many people are gathering here in our Zoom poetry studio, Cultivating Voices live poetry, so that we can be together to celebrate and acknowledge March 8th, International Women's Day, with our Sunday special today on Cultivating Voices live poetry, our Break the Bias reading in honor of International Women's Day, as I mentioned, on March 8th. We have gathered a incredible, exquisite quartet of poets from across the time zones, across around the globe this day, to share their poetry and their perspectives on the celebration and honoring of women's voices, women's experiences here on Cultivating Voices live poetry. And after, we will be sharing with you more voices from folks through our open mic. If you care to, here in Zoom, those of you with us in the studio, please be watching the chat. You'll see how we are establishing the open mic procedure to get those voices, to get the voices of you into our open mic. There are a limited number of reading slots in the open mic, so some of you, grateful for you to be here to listen to all these fabulous poets and their poetry, and some of you, of course, will be the features as well. Well, let me share a little bit with you about our reading again. Our reading today really celebrates and recognizes the contributions of women and non-binary poets across the globe in really every facet of society, across time and history. And despite the global inequities that cut hard across issues of health, poverty, education, gender discrimination, and issues of wealth. I think of wealth and health and poverty as this interconnected triangle. And I would also mention that often we know, too often, that the intersection of these inequities also manifests in emotional and physical violence against women. In the United States, here where I reside, these inequities are certainly more pronounced for women of color. In addition, today, I also want to acknowledge that there are particular sufferings for women in war-ravaged countries. And I draw attention today, of course, to the women of Ukraine as we continue to witness and grieve and hold space as we continue to watch events unfold. Well, the worldwide theme for International Women's Day this year is Break the Bias. And we have today 4 fabulous featured poets who are going to bring their unique perspectives to women's experiences for us to appreciate their artistry, but also their unique commitments to speaking truth to power to women's experiences. So we'll be hearing today from Archna, Sahni, Rachel Gomez, Antje Stehn, and Anne Walsh Donnelly. We'll begin with Archna. Archna has read with us many times over the past couple years. And if you've been with us during those readings, you know the singular presence that Archna brings through her voice and her poetry. And I'm just extremely honored that she agreed to be able to join us today, because it's very, very early. It's very, very early in India. And so I appreciate these poets today joining us from the different time zones. And you'll notice today that we have just such, our features are really across all the time zones. Well, a little more about the particular biography. Archna Sahni is a poet from Toronto who lives between Canada and India. She is the author of First Fire from Calcutta, India, Yeti Press, 2005, and Another Nirvana from the press Mawenzi in 2018, which we've had the pleasure to hear poems from that collection on numerous occasions. Archna has published widely in literary magazines and performed her work all across Canada, the United States, and India, and other locations, of course. And Archna's other avatars are educator and life coach. We couldn't have a more profound, perfect voice to start out our reading today to celebrate International Women's Day on Cultivating Voices Live than Archna Sahni. Welcome and thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much, Sandy. Thank you and CV Live for having me. I'm honored to be here again, for International Women's Day. Thank you, Kim and Dawn, for the great work that you do with CV Live. I will be reading, I've chosen to read poems from two poets from the countries I call home, Canada and India. And if there is time, I would be reading one or two, depending on if there's time. So the first poem is by Margaret Atwood called Helen of Troy Does Countertop Dancing. So here it goes. The world is full of women who'd tell me I should be ashamed of myself if they had the chance. Quit dancing. Get some self-respect and a day job, right? And minimum wage and varicose veins just standing in one place for 8 hours behind a glass counter bundled up to the neck instead of naked as a meat sandwich, selling gloves or something, instead of what I do sell. You have to have talent to peddle a thing so nebulous and without material form. Exploit it, they'd say. Yes, anyway, you cut it. but I've a choice of how, and I'll take the money. I do give value, like preachers. I sell vision, like perfume ads, desire or its facsimile, like jokes or war. It's all in the timing. I sell men back their worst suspicions that everything's for sale and piecemeal. They gaze at me and see a chainsaw murder just before it happens, when thigh, ass, ink blot, crevice, tit, and nipple are still connected. Such hatred leaps in them, my beery worshippers. That or a bleary, hopeless love. Seeing the rows of heads and upturned eyes, imploring but ready to snap at my ankles. I understand floods and earthquakes and the urge to step on ants. I keep the beat and dance for them because they can't. The music smells like foxes, crisp as heated metal, searing the nostrils or humid as August, hazy and languorous as a looted city the day after, when all the rape's been done already and the killing, and the survivors wander around looking for garbage to eat, and there's only a bleak exhaustion. Speaking of which, it's the smiling tires me out the most. This and the pretense that I can't hear them. And I can't because I'm after all a foreigner to them. The speech here is all warty gutturals, obvious as a slab of ham, but I come from the province of the gods, where meanings are lilting and oblique. I don't let on to everyone, but lean close, and I'll whisper, my mother was raped by a holy swan. You believe that? You can take me out to dinner. That's what we tell all the husbands. There sure are a lot of dangerous birds around. Not that anyone here, but you would understand. The rest of them would like to watch me and feel nothing, reduce me to components as in a clock factory or abattoir, crush out the mystery, wall me up alive in my own body. They'd like to see through me, but nothing is more opaque than absolute transparency. Look, my feet don't hit the marble. Like breath or a balloon, I'm rising. I hover 6 inches in the air in my blazing swan egg of light. You think I'm not a goddess? Try me. This is a torch song. Touch me and you'll burn. The next poem is by an Indian English poet, as poets in India who write in English are called. The poem is called An Introduction, and it's by Kamala Das, who was one of the first modernist poets. She was a pioneer in this modernist style of Indian poetry in English. I don't know politics, but I know the names of those in power and can repeat them like days of week or names of months, beginning with Nehru. I am Indian, very brown, born in Malabar. I speak 3 languages, write in 2, dream in 1. Don't write in English, they said. English is not your mother tongue. Why not leave me alone, critics, friends, visiting cousins, every one of you? Why not let me speak in any language I like? The language I speak becomes mine, its distortions, its queernesses, all mine, mine alone. It is half English, half Indian, funny perhaps, but it is honest. It is as human as I am human, don't you see? It voices my joys, my longings, my hopes, and it is useful to me as cawing is to crows or roaring to the lions. It is human speech, the speech of the mind that is here and not there, a mind that sees and hears and is aware. not the deaf, blind speech of trees in storm, or of monsoon clouds, or of rain, or the incoherent mutterings of the blazing funeral pyre. I was child, and later they told me I grew, for I became tall, my limbs swelled, and 1 or 2 places sprouted hair. When I asked for love, not knowing what else to ask for, he drew a youth of 16 into the bedroom and closed the door. He did not beat me, but my sad woman body felt so beaten. The weight of my breasts and womb crushed me. I shrank pitifully. Then I wore a shirt and my brother's trousers, cut my hair short and ignored my womanliness. Dress in saris, be girl, be wife, they said. Be embroiderer, be cook, be a quarreler with servants. Fit in, oh, belong, cried the categorizers. Don't sit on walls or peep in through our lace-draped windows. Be Amy or be Kamala, or better still, be Madhavi Kutti. It is time to choose a name, a role. Don't play pretending games. Don't play at schizophrenia or be a nympho. Don't cry embarrassingly loud when jilted in love. I met a man, loved him. Call him not by any name. He is every man who wants a woman, just as I am every woman who seeks love. In him, the hungry haste of rivers. In me, the ocean's tireless waiting. Who are you? I ask each and every one. The answer is, it is I. Anywhere and everywhere, I see the one who calls himself I. In this world, he is tightly packed like the sword in its sheath. It is I who drink lonely drinks at 12 midnight in hotels of strange towns. It is I who laugh. It is I who make love and then feel shame. It is I who lie dying with a rattle in my throat. I am sinner, I am saint. I am the beloved and the betrayed. I have no joys that are not yours, no aches which are not yours. I too call myself I. The next poem is a poem which I've written. It's called Dreaming of Lalla. Lalla or Laleshwari was a great mystic and yogini who lived in Kashmir in the 14th century. I've alluded to 2 legends. So I'll just mention, one of the legends says that before sunrise, she walked across the river to a shrine for Shiva, where she meditated. And there's another legend which says that in order to punish her for coming home late, her husband threw a stone at the pitcher of water she was carrying on her head. The pitcher broke, but the pitcher-shaped water column froze on her head. And she threw the water outside, which miraculously turned into a pond, which is known as Pond of Lalla. So these are 2 legends associated with her. So I believe that women mystics have broken the bias in their own way. And I've always admired mystics, both from all cultures. So this is what inspired the poem. Dreaming of Lalla. You walk intoxicated in your splendid nakedness, heedless to my call. You walk on through barracks and broken homes, taking the paths you took 600 years ago and vanish around the bend. I am a 5-year-old standing at your feet, imploring you to show on your head, you're walking on water, and all the things my nanny said you could do. But you simply laugh and walk on. You do not mean ill, but I am hurt. I find you in the family album, a presence hovering somewhere in the fading color photographs of my parents' honeymoon, urging them to drink deep of this ancient land. At least my mother did, and so brings me to you 30 years later in her early morning chanting, Om Namah Shivaya, Om Namah Shivaya. I am a young woman standing in front of you as you sit with eyes closed, asking you to teach me the secret science of breath. But you do not open your eyes. You are gone when I close and then open mine. Om Namah Shivaya. I close my eyes and begin to chant to your Lord, knowing this to be the only way to you. Om Namah Shivaya. In the infinite space of sound, we finally meet face to face in our common mourning over our lost paradise. And I can see you are in no mood for peace. Centuries of poise have shattered and fury has opened your eyes. The faiths your breast held as one have broken loose and your hair is waving wildly. At the foot of the Shivalik hills, I can hear your valley thunder deafeningly as your soul leaves the cage of your body to roar your naked song of rage and hurl down water from your pitcher as unending rain. Enfold me, Lala, in your arms as the sound of the bullets rises from the valley to salute your final retreat as you vanish into dreams of the exiled. I think I'll stop here because I'm over time, I believe, Sandy.
Thank you. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Everybody. Archna, Sahni, wonderful. Folks would really appreciate it if you would put the names of the other poets that you read in the chat as well, because they want to look up their work, if you wouldn't mind. My friends, what a great way to begin our celebration today of women's voices, and to hear, the different selection that Archna shared, representing really a very prismatic approach to the lives of women and their voices and what they experience. So I'm very, very grateful to have your voice open, and you to not only share the voices of other poets, but of course your own remarkable work. What a great privilege for us today. Thank you again.
Thank you, Sandy.
I am going to shift to our next wonderful poet for today. We're so fortunate here, aren't we, here on Cultivating Voices? I mean, we've met so many poets over these past 2 years, and I'm so mindful that I would not have probably met many of them without this platform. And that is certainly true of the poet Rachel Gomez, whom I happened to meet really through a long messenger exchange, and encouraged and encouraged her to join us for a first reading. And I can still remember that riveting reading, and every single subsequent reading has really offered us something quite unique, necessary, and poignant. And I have no doubt that's what we'll hear today from Rachel. Well, Rachel was born in Aotearoa, New Zealand, and she is a freelance writer and poet. She holds a graduate diploma in journalism studies from Massey University in Wellington, and writes on a vast array of subjects. Rachel's writing has been published in New Zealand and abroad, and currently she's working on her debut collection, anthology of poetry, titled Of Salt and Sand. And we certainly await that day of publication. If you do pre-orders today, sign me up. I'm the first one in line. Welcome, Rachel, and thank you. You've been with us on many special occasion readings, as well as come to open mics. And it's just, I'm really very, very happy to have your voice be one today to feature and share your perspectives on the theme today of Break the Bias.
Thank you so much, Sandy, Kim Parsons, and Don, to all the wonderful poets who are here today to share what it means to be a woman and to celebrate International Women's Day. Very unfortunately, I'm hoping soon to have Salt and Sand ready to send off out into the ether. Unfortunately, last night I lost about a year's worth of poems, so slightly frazzled today and hoping to find them somewhere today. So my reading that I had intended to read has obviously changed a bit. So I will start by acknowledging the people of Ukraine. It's devastating to see what's happening, but I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be living it. And I felt that I had to write something down. So this is called Putin Declares War. Well, it's hard to write a line when peace feels like a once upon a time. Tough to find rhyme in a world without reason, when a dictator's hunting Ukrainians like it was open season. I turn on the news, listen to NATO, contemplate the words of Plato. The measure of a man is what he does with power. Go ask the war weary, how precious are the minutes, an hour. See the petrified children cower in tunnels, cars, subways, in cities and towns they used to call home. Citizens being picked off like Putin's chicken bones. The Russian forces are making ground, I hear the foreign correspondent say. Chernobyl sits in the path to Kiev, a radioactive wasteland of which gods could offer no reprieve. They say here, only the dead don't grieve. Next, I would like to read from Rupi Kaur. Rupi is a Canadian poet who was born in India, and I find her work just magnificent. And I really recommend Milk and Honey and The Sun and Her Flowers, which is what I will read from today. Advice I would have given my mother on her wedding day. You are allowed to say no. Years ago, his father beat the language of love out of your husband's back. He will never know how to say it, but his actions prove he loves you. Go with him when he enters your body and goes to that place. Sex is not dirty. No matter how many times his family brings it up, do not have the abortion just because I'm a girl. Lock the relatives out and swallow the key. He will not hate you. Take your journals and paintings across the ocean when you leave. These will remind you who you are when you get lost amid new cities. They will also remind your children you had an entire life before them. When your husbands are off working at the factories, make friends with all the other lonely women in the apartment complex. This loneliness will cut a person in half. You will need each other to stay alive. Your husband and children will take from your plate. We will emotionally and mentally starve you. All of it is wrong. Don't let us convince you that sacrificing yourself is how you must show love. When your mother dies, fly back for the funeral. Money comes and goes. A mother is once in a lifetime. You are allowed to spend a couple of dollars on a coffee. I know where there was a time when we could not afford it, but we are okay now. Breathe. You can't speak English fluently or operate a computer or cell phone. We did that to you. It is not your fault. You are not any less than the other mothers with their flashy phones and designer clothing. We confined you to the four walls of this home and worked you to the bone. You have not been your own property for decades. There was no rule book for how to be the first in your lineage, to raise a family on a strange land by yourself. You are the person I look up to most. When I am about to shatter, I think of your strength and harden. I think you are a magician. I want to fill the rest of your life with ease. You are the hero of heroes, the God of gods. Next, I'd like to read from Margaret Atwood, her beautiful collection, Dearly. I highly recommend, and I'll pop that in the chat. Margaret Atwood, of course, is a famous novelist and also a poet, a wonderful Canadian poet. This is called Shadow. Someone wants your body. What's the deal? Beg, borrow, buy, or steal? Gutter or pedestal? That's how it is with bodies that someone wants. What's it worth to you? A rose, a diamond, a cool million, a joke, a drink, the fiction that this one likes you? You could bestow it, this body, like the generous creature you are, or black out and have it snatched, and you'd never know. Kiss it goodbye, the body that was once yours. It's off and running, it's rolled in furs, it's dancing, or bleeding out in a meadow. You didn't need it anyway. It's attracted too much attention. Better with only a shadow. Someone wants your shadow. And this last one is, I have read this before, but I think it's quite poignant for International Women's Day. And I'm reading it for someone quite special. And I think it's a necessary poem, perhaps, and something that many women experience, called Just a Block From. Another woman plucked off the street, dragged by the hair till blue off feet, wings clipped, wolf meets frock, just a block from safety. Here lies another, parents called her Gracie. Just a block from safety, we'll gather to make daisy chains. Some will pray, plaster your portrait on walls in a subway. Pick your mama up off of the parquet, for even in this grey upon grey, she leaves a porch light on for the fireflies to carry you home. Pepito should have been carefree to roam, killed by bow, a death in slow motion, a police cam show. Lena was wearing a purple top, said the cop, a daily walk beneath treetops. Bus stop, lunch stop, a skip, a hop, just dropped, please stop. Did the defense ask, were you, madam, wearing that top? What vibe did you give off? If off, Prince Andrew rubs his shoulder, just dusting Virginia G off. No recollection, said the toff. Andy doesn't sweat it, too well off. It is not a rhetorical question when women ask, where does the buck stop? Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.
Everybody. The indomitable Rachel Gomez, thank you for joining us this morning. Certainly, I hope that the issue with your manuscript works itself out. Oh my gosh, that's a little surprising and a little unsettling, and nevertheless, always able to bring to us the most poignant and most necessary of poems to share with us. So even though you had to, obviously you created a whole new set, I really appreciate what you brought today. And I would never have guessed that you had to scramble to put something new together. Thank you so much. And may you have a good rest of your day. Very early Monday, as opposed to some of us here on Sunday, as we approach International Women's Day on March 8th. Well, we move next to a beautiful area of the world that a group of poets and I were able to write about with our next poet, Antje Stehn. And it is a thrill to be able to welcome you to share your perspectives on our Break the Bias theme today. Antje, I'm so grateful. And those of you who do not know the work that Antje does, you're going, I certainly be listening to what I'm sharing and go to her biographical information, because you'll want to get involved in the international poetry projects that Antje curates with great gusto and enthusiasm and intention. Well, let me share with you the more formal biography before we hear from her. Antje Stehn resides in Italy. She is a poet, visual artist, art curator, and member of German Pen Zentrum. She is part of the international collective Poetry is My Passion and co-editor of the poetry magazine Tom Tom Bum Bum, Los Ablucionistas, and Tiranza. She is member of the scientific community of the Piccolo Museo della Poesia of Placentia, Italy. And Piacenza, Italy. Vincenza. Should know I'm Sicilian. I should be able to get this. I'm looking at.
Yes.
I had a little typographical error, and I'm like, that's not PL, that's PI. Since 2020, she's been curating the art poetry project Rucksack, a global poetry patchwork, which has involved to date more than 250 international poets. You often see her at different readings, hosting and listening with her singular way of being in the world. It is my joy to welcome you, my friend, today to share some poems with us. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy, for this wonderful introduction. And thank you, Kim and Don, for organizing this wonderful evening. Yeah, Women's Day, for me personally, is always a little bit depressive because you start asking yourself, where are we now?
Yes.
Is it things going ahead? But for me, it seems that there's a big regression, not just the war that takes us back to the Cold War, to the 80s, where we risk a nuclear war in Europe, but also for women's rights. Some countries like Poland suddenly have abortion laws that are worse than 50 years ago. And so things are not going so well, I think. The poem I want to read you is reflecting on the different roles women and men have during war. The men are fighting, killing, and are killed. And the women organize the survival of the children, of the old parents, discovering often potentials nobody ever expected because they have to survive. This happened in the World War II. And after the war, suddenly there were contracts for women at work that had a special clause called celibacy clause, which said that the employees who got married had to leave their employment relationship and leave the place for a man, of course, for the man that came back from war. This meant also the loss of the pension. And because the women had to stay at home to be good housewives again. And in Germany, this clause existed for 10 years until in 1957, the federal law court declared that this was unconstitutional. And I myself didn't know about it just until a few months ago. So I got really shocked when I had to write a poem. Celibacy clause. The bombs fell at night. She had been sitting in the basement, comforting the children, took courage to recover the last possessions from the rubble. The women recomposed from nothing. Bricks passed synchronized from hand to hand. She worked as a mason, carpenter, plumber, swapped her winter coat for a sack of potatoes, begging the farmer to add at least a few eggs. In the evening, light was dripping from the walls. She stripped the lice out of the children's hair, while the laundry was boiling and boiling. Finally, the man returned. eyes half closed with fatigue, a stranger in front of the door. It was a time of change, looking forward to forget, they said. She was asked to squeeze herself back into the frame without taking up his space. And he, for no real reason, had it again, the last word. So this is what happened after World War II, but it happened after every war. Now the women are resisting in the back line, but as soon as it's over, things even get worse than before for them. And I'm still talking about the war because we are really, really shocked that these things happen really around the corner for us, and our governments, if they do the wrong move, we will have very, very big problems here in Europe. And the subject of the reading was breaking the bias, the distortion. And distortion is fed by propaganda. The war is just possible because there's a very, very big propaganda made by lies. And in war, this distortion has its highlight. Of course, I firmly condemn this invasion of Ukraine, but I also condemn to send weapons for the fight. They will just bring more killing. Every weapon brings killing and kills. Weapons are made for killing. So this war is between brothers. The Ukrainian and the Russians had a common history until the fall of the Berlin Wall. This history started a long time back with the Kievan Rus in the 9th century, which was a prosperous state, which included Russia and Ukrainian and others. The Russians still regard Ukraine as their cradle. So how does it happen that brothers kill each other? No? So that old wall in Berlin, impossible to climb over, it did not collapse. They sold it piece by piece. Concrete slabs demolished, exhibited as trophies in the museums, while the fragments, bloody gadgets, are dispersed throughout the world and multiply in a flagrant war pandemic. Thinking, reasoning, critical spirit overtaken by primordial instincts. And still, we all just want peace. The good ones and the bad ones, set one against the other like two repelling magnets. Thank you very much. I finish with this, and let's hope that reasoning comes and people talk to each other. Diplomacy is the only solution to all conflicts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so grateful for not only your contemporary perspective, but you bringing the historical perspective to the conversation today, and how that affects how that affects our sense of, you know, what we think governments have been involved with in terms of producing justice for not only their national citizens, but the implications for the global citizenry, and that there certainly seems to be. I was just talking with some friends yesterday about how much I felt like it continued to be on the precipice of a clock that's going counterclockwise, you know, not clockwise, in its progress for all types of justice. not just the injustices that I've been thinking and writing about for years against women, but for all. And but today we highlight in particular how turning the clock back to very, very, very archaic practices, particularly will have a very, very detrimental effect on women and children as they are just trying to live day by day through not only policies, but the policing of what war looks like and what they experience. I'm very, very grateful for the poetry today that you've brought, Antje, and I'll see you very soon, I hope. And may we, we would rather in many times not have to write the poems that we have to write, that we feel compelled to write, and to make space for other poems. And so I appreciate bringing the poetry that is the poetry of conscience, and that we must share and utter today. But this is in hopes that we have space for different aspects of poetry in the days and weeks and years moving forward. I don't know what that looks like, but I know it's a different kind of poetry, and I seek that poetry as well. All right, my friends, we go to our last featured reader before we move to the open mic. Again, another dear friend of ours who's joined us on numerous occasions here on Cultivating Voices, live poetry, and it seems like Ann Walsh Donnelly, when we put the call out, never hesitates to join us, and I'm very, very grateful whenever we're able to be in her company. She's always working on a writing project, whether that's poetry or fiction, and very prolific. And it's fantastic to have her join us as she continues on her journey. And lately, just most recently, having been named Poet Laureate in her inter-county of Mayo. So a little bit more about Ann Walsh Donnelly. Ann Walsh Donnelly lives in the west of Ireland, and she is now currently, as I said, just recently been named Poet Laureate for the town of Belmullet in County Mayo. Her poetry collection, which we heard on one of our new book showcases, I'm not going to leave the asterisk out. I'm going to say it, Odd as Fuck, was published in 2021 by Fly on the Wall Poetry Press, who also published her poetry chapbook, The Woman with the Owl Tattoo. Fly on the Wall Press, great press, Bell Kenyon and Attractive Phase published there, and we've got Morag Anderson publishes there. We've had a number of folks with fabulous press, and glad to be featuring the good work of Ann Walsh Donnelly tonight in Ireland. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Sandy Ann, and thanks to Don and to Kim as well, and to everybody that's come along tonight. Privileged to be reading alongside such brilliant international poets, and it's lovely to see such an international audience here. So yeah, I was thinking about the theme, Break the Bias, and thinking about the fact that it was International Women's Day as well. So I've kind of picked a selection of poems that talk about bias, but also celebrating the female. So the first poem I'm going to read, it's one I wrote as I was coming out. I came out in my 50s, early 50s, and it just kind of talks about the feelings I had and the stigma, I suppose, around being gay. Not so much now in Ireland, but certainly as I was growing up. So this is called From Chink to Rio Grande Rift. Just as my plates were supposed to settle and glide into old age, a woman's touch smashed my crust. My amber core exposed, I roared like a lioness. Volcanic ash scratched my throat. I hoped my mother would survive the lava bomb that missiled towards home, and imagined her thinking, if she'd given me a sister instead of 5 brothers, I wouldn't have turned out this way. Lover and I drifted into sleep, an ash grey cloud over our entangled limbs. I dreamed of the priest who once said as he flexed his fingers, masturbation causes blindness, making love is for making babies, and gays are intrinsically disordered. My brain, marinated in doctrine, castigated me for not keeping the eruption underground. Thank you. And the next poem continued on the LGBT theme, is a poem. I was thinking about women in the 1960s in Ireland. Obviously then it was an awful lot worse to be gay then than it is now. So I was just imagining 2 women sitting on a park in Dublin in St. Stephen's Green, and this is what came out of that. It's called The Wonder of You. In St. Stephen's Green Park, 2 women watch children throw stale crusts to hungry ducks. They listen to Dickie Rock sing The Wonder of You from an old man's transistor radio. They stroke their newly styled beehive hair, sit side by side, feel a heat stronger than August sun. They dare to lick each other's cone, wary of eyes that might stone dead their intrinsically disordered love. Intrinsically disordered love was something I grew up with, being from a Catholic background, so it's kind of a bit of a shock when I realized I was gay. Anyway, so this one is called Conquers, and just to explain for those of you who aren't familiar, in the autumn, but in Ireland anyway, in the autumn, we used to play a game called Conquers, which is basically taking nuts from a horse chestnut tree, and you would bore a hole in the nut and stick a knot on one end, and then hit someone else's conker with your conker, and obviously whoever's conker broke lost. I think it was more of a boys' game, but me having 5 brothers, well, sure, I used to get involved too in it. And this, I suppose, is kind of reflecting on, you know, on the role that women are supposed to play in society and men, and particularly when I was growing up, one of a woman's or girl's worst fear was getting pregnant without being married, because that was just like the worst thing ever. So this is kind of around that theme. It's called Conquers. I stand under the canopy of a horse chestnut tree, wait for a conquer as strong as Cuchulainn to drop. The mist dampening my face turns torrential. A breeze bolts through the branches like a train. I split the thorny green shell that lands on the toe of my shoe, inspect the conquer, roll it between my palms. I feel like a warrior ready for battle. Mrs. Brennan nurses a cup of lukewarm tea in the kitchen and tells Mom about the trollop that has gone and got herself pregnant. I get that screwdriver, bore a hole in my conquer. It gets stuck halfway through. She'll have to leave school now, says Mrs. Brennan, in a voice that reminds me of the Joker in Batman. The book that did it won't have to, says Ma'am. The table trembles as I bang the conker and force the screwdriver out the rear end. It smashes into pieces. A lump lands in Mrs. Brennan's mug. Ma'am scoops the remains into her hands and says to me, go play with your dolls now, like a good girl. I hated dolls. I had one doll, and that was it. I was not a fan of dolls. So International Women's Day, there's a lot going on in the world. It's one crisis after another, and it's hard to kind of keep the head up and keep some love in our hearts and look at the bright side of life. It's very hard. But I wanted to kind of celebrate International Women's Day and maybe hopefully bring maybe a bit of joy into people's lives. This poem is actually called Joy, and it's celebrating the woman's body in all its shapes and forms. Joy. Joy is a naked woman sitting astride a speckled grey mare, raising her arms like a victorious marathon runner, exposing the virgin white of her underarms and her baby sham breasts. Joy is her hands bound by the untamed locks of her salted hair. I imagine mine delving into the folds of her unstarched body. Joy is another woman on a piebald, knees bent, her derriere a reversed C, skin the colour of Uluru sandstone, lips parted. Joy is the feel of hoofs sinking into damp sand, oblivious to the tide creeping towards them, like a white veil threatening to shroud. Joy is sitting in Prague, watching wild women ride. You, the grey-speckled mare, and I, the piebald pony. There you go. And one last one, and this, I really hope that it makes you laugh and doesn't make anyone cringe. And one thing I've written about a bit is about, as well as the female body, about the menopause, because we don't talk about the menopause enough, in my opinion. And this one was kind of like me rebelling against the menopause. And it's called My Menopausal Vagina. My menopausal vagina is the village's oldest pub, doors wide open. She ignores medical experts who call closing time. She doesn't miss sex hormones that disappeared with dusk. She's still quite a capable host. Her parties never run dry. She doesn't feel like a forgotten World War I trench full of sludge. Prefers to think of herself as an estuary. Kayakers, windsurfers, and paddlers still want to explore. She delights in their enjoyment of her brackish water that always leaves a salty taste on the tongue. My vagina is not a posy that will welcome a man's nose. She's ragweed, not easy to contain, liable to poison mules and asses stupid enough to wander into her pasture for a munch, ignoring the women only sign she's erected at her entrance. Thanks, everybody. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Fantastic to hear from Anne Walsh Donnelly. Thank you. And a great reminder that in addition, to the significance of raising the issues around women's experiences, as I mentioned, that cut across wealth, health, economics, education. There is still the body. There is still the body, and to have women speak, be able to speak, and name their own bodies and be in their bodies and write of their bodies is still, to me, a miraculous thing to celebrate. Thank you for bringing that to our stage today, to another aspect this prism, of this prism of how we come together today in celebration and then in the naming of women's experiences, both the joy and the sorrow. They're always together. So thank you for bringing, particularly at the end of the reading, the joy. We'll see you next time, Anne. Everyone, let's take just a moment before we move to our fabulous open mic readers. We've got 10 folks who are going to be joining us on the open mic. Let's just take a nanosecond to unmute, show our appreciation for our 4 features.
Bravo. Wonderful. Marvelous. Wow. Great.
I hear Lori saying, wow. Wow, indeed. Well, we're going to continue to be wowed, no doubt. And the thing that I love most about Cultivating Voices Live Poetry is that, you know, we, for some of our special events, we will invite our featured poets, but on any day, our open mic poets could be, can be, will be, and have been our featured poets during other readings. And so it is not without you know, wonderful, in the wonderful spirit of camaraderie and community that I really am thrilled to see the list of poets that have come out today to read in the open mic portion of the reading. Everybody will be reading just one poem up to about 3 minutes. If you know me, I'm not the stopwatch person, but we're looking to go about a half hour for this part of the reading. And I'll not be doing formal introductions. I'll just be naming who's reading and who's coming next. And I'll try to keep my comments to a minimum in between. So first today, up on the open mic, we have Lesley Traynor, followed by LoRe Desrosiers.
Hi, everyone. I just want to say thank you. 4 amazing women, really, really impressed. Fantastic poetry. I'm actually the founder of an inclusive collective of women writers, and I brought them together. They're called Women with Fierce Words. I brought them together in 2016 because I was really concerned about censorship in publication, but more self-censorship when they were reading their work in public spaces and being discouraged to read their work. So at the Edinburgh Fringe, I put a call out for women to come and read their work on the streets of Edinburgh. And from that, this collective evolved. This Tuesday, we will be reading in the Scottish Parliament, celebrating International Women's Day, which I'm incredibly proud of. And it's kind of amazing. We have done amazing things along this road, you know, in the past few years, but this is really a pinnacle. I'm also going to be taking the place of our Scottish poet laureate, Kathleen Jamie, who unfortunately has COVID. And I am going to be reading her poem that she wrote for COP26 at the event as well. But what Women with Fierce Words is about is these fierce words, these words of empowerment. And when we do events, we encourage people in the audience to write a fierce word on an artist's canvas. And that is, you know, their word of empowerment. So that's what a fierce word comes about. But I wrote a poem on the day, and it's called Thrawn. And it's also the title of one of my poetry collections. And Thrawn is Scots. It means stubborn. It's a derogatory term that's used for strong women. And they even use the word for a witch's broom in Scotland, a bism, to describe her as a thrawn bism. So I wrote this poem called Thrawn. I am a dangerous woman with words that are fierce, can pierce, punch through barriers some would place in my path. They can reduce others to tears, highlight fears that only a woman would know. I am a dangerous woman. I have a voice, and it will sing. It will ring with a truth. And when my words are hoarse and bloodied from the battlefield, my fierce word will lift me, set me back on my true course. But this voice can soothe, embrace you in words that keep your weeping at bay, support you, hold you until the day your own fierce word form in your mouth and you stand in this place and are free to have your say. And I'm going to be reading that in the Scottish Parliament.
Gosh, oh my gosh, I'm so glad that we got the preview of the Scottish Parliament performance. Congratulations and thank you. Thank you for bringing the fierce words, not just to us, but also to that platform of where government officials will be hearing that I am a dangerous woman. I have a voice.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, fantastic. Wow. I wish I could, I will be there in spirit with you on International Women's Day, everyone. Let's hold Lesley in that space of bringing that message to the government. Oh my gosh, fantastic. It reminds me of seeing Yvonne Boland read. I mean, I didn't see her, but the video of Yvonne Boland reading also at the United Nations. It's very, very powerful to have been invited. I'm very glad your group is being recognized. Thank you. Well, that is a powerful opening to our open mic. And next we go to our dear friend, one of my salmon sisters, LaToiya Desrosiers, and then we'll hear from Mary Oishi, our dear friend from New Mexico. So hi, Lori.
Hi, Sandy.
I'm so
How
glad
are you?
you're here today.
I'm happy to be here. This is wonderful. I'm sort of blown away. I have to follow that. That was wow. Everything just blew me away, and it's beautiful, and it's all so important right now. One of my journal's word piece, we're doing a Ukraine themed section for the next issue, and I'll just put that real quick up. And it's a social justice journal anyway, so very welcome women or non-binary or LGBT work or anything that you want to put in there that's important. And it's supposed to be .co, not .com. By the way, I didn't make a mistake. People always say, "Oh, you made a mistake." No. Anyway, I'm going to read one poem, and I'm just getting it up here. Which one did I decide on? Here it is. This is a little different. It's called Rocking, and it's for AS, who's my grandchild. Sing slowly the music you heard when you were little, and Mom would hold you on her lap and rock you, because you were a baby and you needed the rocking. Sing softly the music you heard when you were small with your babies, rock them, because they are so little and need the rocking. Sing sweetly the music you heard when you were little. Hold your grandchild in your lap and rock him because he is a baby and needs the rocking. We both need the rocking, need the singing. Keep rocking, my love. I pass this down to you.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you so much, Lori, and reminding us of the significance of legacy and the generations, the interconnection of the generations. And do put that information in the chat for all of us if you.
I did. I threw the link
Thank
in.
you. Beautiful.
My grandmother, by the way, I'm trying to work on a poem about her. She was born in Kiev, and so was many people in my family, and they all fled in the early part of the 1900s because they were Jews who tried to get to get out of there. And it's so interesting to me and so meaningful to think that the place where my grandmother walked, that these streets are being bombed. It's quite disturbing. And I didn't finish the poem yet, though, so I couldn't read it today.
Well, look forward to all your new work.
Thank you. And hope to see people at AWP conference. I'll be there with, I'll have a table for Naugatuck River and Word Peace. So have a wonderful afternoon, evening, morning, night, wherever you are.
Thank you. All right. Our next reader is, again, our dear friend who's been with us many times, and I'm really grateful. I hear you have a very special poem for us today, Mary Oishi, and Mary will be following Mary. I've got my list here. Sorry, everybody. I'm just looking for my list. I'm going to let Mary go, and I'll introduce the next person in a moment.
Thank you. Thank you. It's an honor to be here today with so many wonderful women poets. And this poem was originally published in Icon, the journal, and it was an issue about the future of feminism. And it's called Broken Frame. This was 2 administrations ago, at least. 3 children clutch their pregnant mother's skirt. This time the explosions, not fireworks, landing oh so close. Boom, boom, boom. How can she protect? Where can they run? In danger, fire, fresh corpse, rubble streets. Boom, boom. If a bomb falls here, will below ground be a furnace or a fallen beam trap? With none to rescue from the horror, from the pain, the stench of burning flesh. This poem is a graphic picture on a sign in front of every senator, every candidate who calls for escalation, for, quotes, tough measures. This is a pro-life poem. This is a pro-life poem. He hasn't yet said his first word. Just a few coups, but today his eyes are scanning his mother's face. He sees something's wrong. He doesn't know she chose to end her last pregnancy to her stepmother's older brother. She just couldn't bear her daddy being grandpa and uncle, both. She was a teenager trying to get to know his new wife's family, but it all went way too fast, way too far, too fast. Alone in the house, the flattery, the alcohol, her desire to be part of things. She had an escort, a compassionate, courageous woman to walk her to the clinic. She wished she didn't have to make that choice, but she knew it was the right one. She always knew if she ever conceived in love, she would gladly have the child, and she loves this baby's daddy like life itself. She loves the little miracle looking up at her with intent brown eyes, jewels amid the rich chocolate of his skin. She loves him more than she can ever tell. She wants him to grab life, stand tall, be a good man, maybe be president someday. But this day she thinks Skittles and iced tea. She thinks hoodies. She thinks walking down the street a few days before college. She thinks 4 hours in his own blood. She thinks, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. She thinks of public calls for assassination, images of lynchings in effigy. She thinks of 21st century James Crow Jr. in his suit and tie on a mission to end voter fraud. She thinks court-ordered end to affirmative action to voting rights, charges of reverse racism. With no friends in high places, she wonders how he will ever get his foot in the door, even with shoes high-shined, head full of learning. She wonders if her pro-choice sisters will stand with her now that she has made this choice. Will they demand her chosen child have a chance to get through, that he and she have choices matching theirs? This poem is a pro-choice rally in the face of militarized police, by the gates of private prisons, by the broken glass of underfunded schools, by the precincts with single voting machines, long lines, also by the manicured lawns, up the circular driveways of those who claim not to see color, whose responsibility ended when they voted for a Black man, who are so glad to live in a post-racial world. This poem demands all women's right to choose, all women, to really have choices, opportunity. This is a pro-choice poem. This is a pro-choice poem. This is a pro-life, pro-choice poem looking for a new frame. Thank you.
Mary, you always bring the poems. You always bring the poems. This is a pro-choice poem. Thank you for bringing your particular poem to Cultivating Voices Live Poetry today on the open mic. So appropriate for International Women's Day, a celebration and recognition of the necessity to continue to speak for women's rights. We go from Mary now to, my apologies that I went from, that I didn't have my list up. We go from Mary to Kate Wegrzyn, and after Kate will be LaToiya Whipple. Thank you so much, Kate. I'm so glad you're here today with us.
Wonderful to be here and great to see your mama. Yeah, for all our mamas. So a brief introduction. Love disguised with brutal force never took away my life of love, creating anew strength shared with good men, family, and friends. I was in New York City, and I thought that love had passed me by in my early 20s. And a friend took me to the cookery down in the village, 1981. She said, you're going to have to listen to this woman. She will show you. She will show you. It was Alberta Hunter. She had been on hiatus for decades. As a New York City nurse, this was her re-entry. I came into the room and sat down at a small table, and this woman with very long earlobes and very long earrings came right up to me and pointed to me, and she started to say, love has not passed you by, and this is why And she began to sing, continuing to look right at me, pointing at me, and changed my life. May we all realize the power that we have to change a life. This is my poem. We will not continue wearing down as stones in river's force, grinding us down, grinding us down. We will not continue to be subject to the perceived superiority of boys and men. I dream a visit to Seneca Falls. Dreams then bring me there. If I dream of you, I will see you. You know, you will be here. There will be no lapse of purpose. We do not wait for the carrier pigeon, nor the letter carrier. World ley lines reach every daughter, reach us safe. From girl to woman in the sacred cycle of blood, kitchen to kitchen, consistent repetition. Wretched tantrums of traitors, unbridled anger, disguised as men, taught since they were boys, threatened the girls into silence. I was a young teen. If you speak, if you dare speak, you will endure a horrific battle. I have not stopped speaking. Do you hear me?
Oh man. Oh man, I love that poem. I love that poem. And here's also what I love. I love that your introductions to your poems are poems themselves. Just gonna say that. Thank you. Thank you. I heard you. I can hear you. I can hear you. I hear you. Next, we will hear from LaToiya Whipple, followed by Betty Gilmore. Hi, LaToiya.
Hi, Sandy. I am so excited to be with each and every one of you all today in virtual community. And I am also excited to be reading with you all today, a piece from my book that is available on Amazon as well as Barnes & Noble. And it is entitled Broken, Crushed, Shattered, Mended, Healed. How to Survive a Broken Heart by LaToiya Whipple. And the piece that I will be sharing from that book is entitled Shoelaces by LaToiya Whipple. Shoelaces are the inanimate object that represents the imprints of our journey. Shoelaces reveal where we have gone and where we are going. Shoelaces reveal where we want to go. And sometimes it reveals places we wish we had not gone. Shoelaces indicate where our present, past, and future will afford us to journey. Shoelaces can lead to beautiful journeys. Shoelaces can lead to muddy puddles that will leave a horrid stain that only a rainbow can replace. Shoelaces can lead to smooth journeys. Shoelaces can lead to entanglements of knots that will crisscross one's journey to be in such an unpleasant pattern that will cause one's life to be broken, crushed, and shattered. Shoelaces can lead to entanglements of knots that will crisscross one's journey to be in such an unforgettable intersection that will mend and heal one in such a penetrating way. Shoelaces can lead to entanglements of knots that will crisscross one's journey to be a teacher on how to survive a broken heart along the journey. In peace. Thanks for listening.
In peace, my friend. The meditation on a shoelace. I'm never going to think about my shoelaces the same way again after today. And also now, because I don't have your collection yet, now I understand also where the title to the book comes from. So the title poem today, my friends, LaToiya Whipple, thank you. And we'll see you soon.
Absolutely. Look forward to it.
Look forward to it. Indeed. Well, next we hear from Betty Gilmore.
Yes. Okay. Hi.
Followed by Yeva Johnson.
I love seeing you. I thank everybody. I can't believe how great the poetry is. I feel so honored and humbled to be here. I'll read two poems. They're not really long. And the first poem is actually, if everybody remembers, the pandemic started just before Women's Day, and it stopped everything. And I wrote this poem because I missed Women's Day. It's called Women's Day. The time will come again when the danger has passed, and we will celebrate with our bodies brushing and our banners waving, streaming through the streets. The time will come again when the danger has passed, and we will celebrate red shoes with no blood-stained blues, no screaming alone in the night. The time will come again when the danger has passed, and we will celebrate in December or June. And if someone asks, when is Women's Day? We will say, today and every day. The next is, I felt obligated because the war in Ukraine reminded me of all the wars around the world. So I wrote this poem, kind of poem song called Without War. I can eat without war. I can drink without war. I can love without war. So what is war for? I can see without war. I can hear without war. I can walk without war. So what is war for? I can sing without war. I can laugh without war. I can dance without war. So what is war for? I can cry without war. I can even hate without war. I can die without war. So what is war for? I can live without war. Thank you. And thanks for the reference to Alberta Hunter, the great blues singer, and everybody. I can't tell everyone how wonderful your poems were. It's, just inspiring and enjoyable, and even as sad. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Betty, for being with us today and for bringing the banners, reminding us that.
I missed it so much, being out. It was like everything stopped, and anyway, thank everybody.
We are together with our banners today.
Yeah. This is great too, just to be able to do this.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow. I can't echo enough what Betty said. The poetry today has just been phenomenal, and we have just a few more poets to go before we round out our celebration, our honoring, our recognition of the contributions of women and our experiences, our voices on this eve of International Women's Day. Let us all go out into the streets and share our poems. And next, to share our poems, to share a poem, is Yeva Johnson. Thank you, Yeva. Good to see you. And thanks again for reading with us a couple weeks ago. Those of us with us have not, of course, forgotten your performance a few weeks ago. And following Yeva will be Cynthia Steele.
Thank you, Sandy. I am really honored and delighted to be here today. And I have one poem. I will not be playing my typical instrument, but I will probably be in keeping with the reading of today. This poem is called Heritage Lullabies. Nobody knows the trouble I've seen. Echoes in the alto, murmured memories of my mother in duet with my grandmother's deeper, near tenor. Matrilineal music steadies me. I sing as I raise my own tiny brood. My foremothers prepared me for this Sisyphean task to teach the next generation how to lift the veils, those unasked for cloaks, and allow their spirits to roam free. Sometimes I feel like a motherless child, consoles in those moments I clamor for their physical touch, that roughed, soft maternal hand. My powerful matriarchs rose up radiant, but were struck down too soon by stroke and dementia. So I am left with only the soul kisses and mitochondrial melodies of my mother and her mother, both departed before I came into my own. Spirituals wrap around me, my baby bunting, tuneful consolation legacy from every past primogenitor who could not embrace a grown daughter. Their songs become arms lifting me so that I kiss the sun. Thank you.
Your voice is your own flute. Your voice is your own flute. Thank you for that. Wow. Oh my gosh. Yeva Johnson, everyone. Fantastic, beautiful, wonderful. Thank you for bringing your poem today. All right, Cynthia Steele, and then our final open mic reader for today will be Josephine LoRe. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you so much, Sandy. Thank you for all you do. I'm so excited to be here. I'm going to read one poem, The Return of the Three-Headed Hope. Sitting outside Two Sister Bakery in Homer, Alaska, a day like any other day, the bakery is open, the line is long, and the wait is worth it. Skipper girl, page, skip a page, acknowledgements, sometimes get skipped if not poetic enough, but she, that skipper, talked me through that Whittier fish. 214-pound halibut, coming in and pulling out, I acknowledge her. Don't reel, wait, like don't push, wait. Okay, now reel. It's okay if he struggles a bit. Even let him jerk the line, give a little, relax. You'll need your strength when he comes. A lone young gull, herring gull, waits with us, bobbing in the still water, farther out in the bay than we've ever been before. My new surgically altered hand, thinner than the other, one bone shorter, replaced by an unwitting arm tendon, refashioned for its new job, cushion between bones. Its scar runs carefully between the veins of my lower thumb, lay whitish now, taking up space. Holds the pole, it reels. The other hand, still in need of surgery, seems stable enough. I make concentric circles around the reel as directed by Paige. Her slight boyish figure, tough as a young man, swells my heart. Pride of all women who take on men's vocations. I look to her as a mother may on a feisty daughter. She does not grab my pole. Her eyes exude confidence. She does not ask if I need help. She'd know. She's watched people time after time bring one in. No doubt, if I let go when he pulls and strips a bit of the line back out to the sea and then slacks and I reel, it will come to fruition. I'll bring it. I brought it with borrowed confidence, with a new hand, with adrenaline surging through the still ill hand, removing memory, removing pain, and embracing the now, the inveterate fisher, the culpable one, responsible for the life, taking and giving. Adrenaline takes attention, turns other people in the room into muffled voices. Probably My husband's daughter. Sarah asks if I'm okay. Probably his other daughter, Beth, asks if I need her to take over. I shake my head, probably my own daughter. Adopted, Shania, calls out, "You can do it, Mom," standing back watching, a cacophony, clattering of mouths moving, no sound. I stay on reeling the 20 minutes to bring in the fish. I never dream this size, I just know it is possible. It is mine as much as I know the likelihood is that it will undo me. The odds are in the fish's favor. Hope slippery with slime, skin, and strength, enough strength to get free. Yet I think of my great feats and this, my Moby Dick. My mind wanders to fertility treatments, a decade trying, failing, succumbing, almost drowning. I will never give birth the way most do. The dye dispersed everywhere, through pinholes in my fallopian tubes, out through an endometriosis-riddled reproductive system, out through doctor after doctor, invited in to witness the sham of reproductive failure. It goes everywhere. I remember no control, no hope, only dispersion. I'd marched with Planned Parenthood, thinking freedom in my 20s meant being free. Laying there, I let baby's non-existence sneak into my brain. Dr. Z says, "Stop with the pregnancy tests already." At 14, my mother insisted an aborted baby wash out of me. You're not going to have a life like mine. Good intentions, but the pages for life write themselves. She flipping the script, fish flipping, scripts flipping, babies being slipper sucked through scientific sinkholes. Abortion, the freedom of our bodies twisted. And now my ardent determination, cheered on by my daughter, grown. She knows my pain and would never step in and take over for me. And I pray I've given her her own voice. I feel the presence of no one now. I turn slightly, see mouths moving, excitement, adrenaline growing. This fish is a sign of the ocean's fertility. Last year, a recovering useless hand. I couldn't even pretend I could bring in a fish or fasten a bra. I gained weight, afraid to use my limb. Now I watch my majestic hand hold rod and reel among this heavy slippage of line. The skipper and daughters and 3 men huddle, yet give me space. Periodically, doubt creeps in and I think, it's a chicken, a tangled line. And I've waited for another of our party to shout out, "You've got my line." But the longer that went on with no one calling out, the more that evil hope, that dreaded 3-headed hope, reared its head. Possibility, fruition, satisfaction. Visits to specialists in Soldotna by the river, my ex and I wept at our joined infertility. Neither a candidate, no one to blame. My uterus strangled, necrotic in my 30s. Doctors of 6 or 8 request admittance to see the freak, the scientific anomaly, the non-breeder. I feel my own physical disintegration may end up in a scientific article that speculates the whys. Endometriosis, fibroid tumors, scarring, pain for many years. My body, my enemy. My pores ooze with gratitude for where I find myself. On the deck of the Sweet Pea, Captain Matt, Skipper Page, allowing nature to write my story of abundance, to work through memories of loss, to have the return of the 3-headed hope, the hope I'd given up in other ways. On this day, in my 50s, simplicity returns. Confidence in life along with strength. The halibut have returned. I bring the line in within inches. The captain and skipper throw, pull, launch the massive fish into the boat against its wildest wishes. My childhood song when I fished with my father. Fishy, fishy in the sea, won't you come and bother me? Before the bullet shot through the back of his skull, before the time when things went bad for him. mental health and isolation walling him off. He and Uncle Salad brought us 2 towheads on their boat, the Laura Jane. Father, arms wrapped around me to give me his confidence, to tell me, you can do this, girl. You bring her in. And I, with hope, believed it so. This father, now a distant, fading memory, whose figure still encourages me at the line when I reel. The fish slurps onto the craft, slurps up onto the craft. Gray bumps on one side, flips, slippery, smooth, ivory, a silver dollar gray spot, a deep notch into its tail, his fingerprint. Her tail, a hazard of slippage. The skipper hits her, it's a her, many times. Some 5 times I kneel upon my catch, forgetting hands, forgetting unborn babies, forgetting barrenness, remembering mother's hopes for us to live a better life. That's all. Thank you.
I'm trying to unmute and I can't even unmute. Oh my gosh. I beg to differ. That is not all. That is not all. Thank you for sharing that poem with us today, Cynthia. Oh,
Thank you.
oh my gosh. Our final poet for today. Again, a poet that we are so fortunate to be able to hear from, be in her company often, our dear friend Josephine LoRe. Thanks for closing us out today, Josephine.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here. And if it's okay, if I could read 2, because the first one ends on a dark note, and I don't want this reading to end on a dark note. The first poem, well, when my kids were small, the kitchen table was made of pine, and pine is a softwood, so it had all of the indentations and marks of the cutlery slammed too hard, or the pencils pushing into the worksheet, or the drink that was too hot laid down. And we had the table refinished, and I missed all of those marks. That was like a history of the kids' upbringing. And I sometimes think of my scars, the scars that my body bears. And so I wrote this poem called The Map Life Leaves Upon the Body. My mother and sisters share the same scars: scalpel slice, navel to Mons, a slit through which life was lifted. Flailing, I entered this world a fish, protesting space, clenched tight against brightness, slash of air invading lungs, first cry. Swallowed and whisked by foreign hands while doctors worked their fine needle points to sew my mother's belly shut. And here, at the base of my throat, the same Mona Lisa smile as my father, as his mother, coal mine butterfly, wing asunder, no longer able to fly. But some scars I bear alone, 4 holes dispersed across my belly. The first for a camera with lights, the second for gas, the third to cut away, the last to section clean, my vesica removed. For bile rose too easily as I balked at the 3 persons in my bed, unholy trinity, my husband, his bottle, and me. And the next poem I'd like to read is a completely different tone. It's a tribute not just to my mum, but to all the women who played that role in my life. So my mum, my nonna, my grandmother, and my godmother, Pipina, my mother-in-law. Mother's hands. Mother's hands rolling dough to make cujaredre, Sicilian cookies filled with mandarins and figs, almonds, raisins, espresso. Nonna's hands, rosary beads slipping one by one, her nighttime litany. Mama's hands dirt brown as she plants seedlings, snips stragglers so vines grow strong. Pipina's hands flipping through the pages she gifts me, fostering this wonder of words. Mama's hands never at rest, plums to jam, red peppers to barbecue and peel. Nana's hands, knitting needles clicking, a code of wisdom older than language. Mama's hands twisting wet laundry before passing it through a hand-spun wringer. Nana's hands using a broomstick rolling pin to create paper-thin sheets of tagliatelle and lasagna. My mother-in-law's hands stuffing a turkey with the magic of sage and butter, apple and bread cubes. My mama's hands bathing my babies, soaping their skin slippery softs. Pipina's hands quiet in the lap of her turquoise apartment as I read my first poems aloud. My daughter telling her friends about my hands. What collection of memories will these hands hold for her?
I love that our reading today closes on hands. The grasps of hands, the memories of what hands have held. And again, that generational sense of women, the connections. Thank you so much. Beautiful reading. Everyone, we have traveled many places today. Hearts, mind, soul, across time zones, but we've time traveled also. Across the terrains of bodies and across the terrains of pains and joys and loves, all in the spirit of International Women's Day and our theme of break the bias. Before I give a shout out to all of our poets that read today, I thought I would share a poem with all of you by the poet Cassandra Lopez, who is a poet who is in the anthology. She's a Pacific Northwest poet here. When the light of the world was subdued, our songs came through, from the Norton Anthology of Native American poets. And Cassandra is a member of the Cahuilla, Tongva, and Luiseno nations, and received her MFA from the University of New Mexico. Her debut collection is called Brother Bullet. It's an incredible collection. And I wanted, and she is the co-founder of a journal called As Us, a space for women of the world. So I thought it was very appropriate to end with a poem by Cassandra Lopez. And this is called A New Language. My words are always collapsing upon themselves, too tight in my mouth. I want a new language, one with at least 50 words for grief and 50 words for love, so I can offer them to the living who mourn the dead. I want a language that understands sister pain and heart hurt. So when I tell you, brother is my hook of heart, you will see the needle threading me to the others, numbered men, women, and children of our grit spit city. I want a language to tell you about 2010's 37th homicide, the unsolved, a man that my city turned to number, sparking me back to longer days when ocean is the mouth of summer. Our shell fingers drive into sand, searching. We find tiny silver and crabs. We scoop and scoop till we bore and go in search of tangy seaweed. We are salted sun. How we brown to earth. Our warm flesh flowering. In this new language, our bones say sun and sea, reminding us of an old language our mouths have forgotten, but our marrow always remembers. Well, here is to now the memory of the new languages that we shared today in the shadows of our ancestral languages, and as I said, across time and space, and too many politics and governments casting things in women's ways, in the way of women. But today, and many other days, may we, as Betty Gilmore remind us, carry the banners, go to the streets, speak our voices, continue to create our poems, and celebrate our language, our bodies, our mouths, our voices. Everybody, a huge, huge debt of gratitude and grace and incredible thanks to our readers. We heard today from early at the top of the hour from Archna Sahni joining us from India, Rachel Gomez joining us from New Zealand, Antje Stehn joining us from Italy, and Walsh Donnelly joining us from Ireland, and on the open mic from all across the time zones. We heard from our featured open micers, Lesley Traynor, Lori Desrosiers, Mary Oishi, Kate Wegrzyn, LaToiya Whipple, Betty Gilmore, Yeva Johnson, Cynthia Steele, and Josephine LoRe. Well, it's been quite the reading, the celebration of International Women's Day. How about we take just a nanosecond to unmute and thank all our readers, and I'll just make a few close announcements and we'll close it out.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Incredible.
You all were fabulous. What a reading.
Bravo, fabulous.
Bravo, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, folks, you know, sometimes we've put on pageants of poetry, and this was not intended to be the pageant, but it certainly was. It certainly was. And I so look forward, and I'm so grateful to Don and Kim for helping us produce these readings that will allow me and you to go back and listen again and again and again, as I certainly am going to do with this reading. I hope you all will come right on back next week. We'll have our new book showcase, first one for the month of March, and just be on the lookout for more readings coming up during the year from Cultivating Voices, live poetry. I'm your host, Sandy Yannone. I remind you all, my dear friends, you know, before I close, I remind you, tomorrow night on Quintessential Listening will be Josephine LoRe reading. So make sure you check out that. It's Michael Anthony Ingram's program, Quintessential Listening. And tomorrow night will be Josephine. I hope you'll put that in the chat while I'm chatting up. And
Thank you.
and yes, of course. And I want to remind you all that in the spirit of all of our voices, that it's taken many of us a long time to speak, that it is the most important thing to pay attention to our listening. We've never needed it more. And that in that spirit, you continue to work toward elevating, raising your voices in the name, peace, and social justice. And of course, I would be very remiss if I didn't end with how I always end every week by saying, go out, go forth, be well, take very good care of your beloveds. And of course, keep writing those miraculous, miraculous poems. And we'll see you next week. Thanks again.